How will my Soviet-style tank rush turn out in Broken Arrow? Spoiler alert, not too well. I'd say a pretty decent fighter in the game. It's not the best, but it is pretty cheap, and that's why I brought them. As you can see, the opponents just had way more AA than us, so they're going to be winning that aerial fight. But we took out a lot of their planes in the skirmish, so they don't really have that many bombers as well. I'm bringing up our Typhoon VDVs with the Medicis. These are a great opener in the game because the Medicis can hold their ground pretty well against both vehicles and infantry. So they're good to bring in the beginning and just take the positions that you want to take. So I'm bringing them up. My teammate over here is bringing up as well. And we're going to see some good teamwork and just initially capturing the points. When the game opens up, I typically like to just take light vehicles that are quick. So the Typhoon, right, the Humvees for the Americans. Take those vehicles and just quickly ride in. They're safer than helicopters and they won't get blown out of the sky. So we're moving up. I got a Cornet as well. More Metis squads in the right over here. We see we have the Su-30 above us, but he doesn't have a payload. So they wasted all that money, but they don't really have a payload. I also don't see the helicopters yet, although I'm sure they have some. On E, we can already see them capturing the point. My Typhoon's moving up. We see the Cornet as well. The Cornet is absolutely great against anti-tank, even though it's not top attack, which for the Americans, they do have the TOW that is top attack, which is absolutely meta, insane anti-tank, and one of the best units pound for pound in the game itself. But here, we see I am moving up with the VDV Metis. Here, we have the Typhoon VDV, fighting another Typhoon VDV, so a little bit of a skirmish here, but it won't be too much of a fight. And I always like to take the key building locations in the city because it's always great to have, you know, the elevation come in first, take all the high-rise buildings, and just force your opponent into basically choke points because they can't attack the high-rises. So here we bring up our Cornet. We have a second Cornet coming up. They do have a Su-34 bombing us, but that's okay. We're going to bring up our Verbas. Manpads in this game are absolutely insane. The manpads have great range, they have good damage, and they're hard to spot. So typically when you get manpadded, it's very hard to pinpoint where they were unless you were actually looking at the manpad. So that's pretty great. And in cities, they're absolutely necessary. We see they're going to try to attack us with this guards unit. That's fine. Machine gun's going to go off, and we're gonna do some good damage here, which is always great. The Beryusa he's using is a really cheap AA unit, and with Iglas is pretty powerful. They're bringing up the Mi-28, and those Lemurs are going to do work on me. So I'm going to have to retreat this Metis back a little bit. But we'll get the Verbas and we'll counter him. And sometimes that's how Broken Arrow goes, is you think it's like simple warfare, but in reality it's countermeasure and strength, right? Somebody brings a powerful unit to the battlefield and the opponent gets a countermeasure to it. And sometimes that's how these matches will play out. So here we're moving up our Cornets. These are the wrong unit to fight the Medicis, so I'm going to have to get more units in. We're going to mow down this grenade launcher. And so I'll have to get that Mi-35 out if I can. Right now we're pretty much half and half with the opponents. As you can see on the right hand side, they're doing pretty well. Me, I'm a little bit alone over here. I do have the friendly bring us some AA or aircraft coming in. The S-400s are firing off. S-400s are absolutely great in this game. With the radar on, they have great range. And another thing most people don't know about Broken Arrow is that you can actually intercept missiles with your AA. So that's something, you know, from other RTSs we've never really seen before. In Broken Arrow, it's very critical. So having an S-400 or a Tor, even a Panzer next to your advancing troops is very important because you can intercept missiles and protect your troops from a lot of that missile artillery that otherwise would get through. So that's where you're seeing this opponent's doing a great job in supporting, or this friendly is doing a great job in supporting us. He's going to shoot down a lot of aircraft, which is great. Here we got the Verbas just hanging out. I'm going to try to repair that one Verba that's almost gone. That was a big loss, if you can see on the right hand side. That Tu-95 was shot down, so that was a big loss for the Russian player. with aircraft, you gotta balance your spending. If you spend a lot on a bomber and it gets shot down, you could potentially, go 5 minutes in the game where you're just behind and trying to catch up on points if it's an expensive bomber. So you got to be careful how you use the aircraft. Here we see on the left hand side he's bringing up some AA. Here I'm just going to try to move my cornets around, try to get some fields of fire. And the S-400 was not able to shoot down those missiles. I think that was seed missiles, which is why you're seeing he's trying to seed the S-400. But nonetheless, my friendly back here, he's doing a good job with the AA. He's letting him take the cheaper Beryusas, and he's leaving the more expensive S-400s in the back, which is always great. Me, I'm just focusing mostly on infantry here. Right now in Broken Arrow, tanks without active protection are pretty weak. So trying to use tanks without active protection, they're going to die extremely quickly to any anti-tank missile, to top attack munitions, even infantry and force. They're going to die to a lot of things. So trying to use armored pushes is not that great. So typically what I try to use is a combination of artillery and then infantry, especially infantry with ranged weapons. And that's worked out pretty well. You're going to see we're just going to move up here. We got a helicopter lurking around. He's firing off missiles, but that's okay. He doesn't see us. And the helicopter is lurking our way. We don't have any AA in that area, so I'm going to have to be careful. But that friendly Su-30 does take him out. We got the Tor system being taken out. That's going to be a big loss. Tors are pretty expensive. They're like 200 points when you have the 16 missile upgrade. So it's pretty expensive to lose them. But the Tor is one of my favorite systems just because you have so many missiles to do things with. So we're going to move up with the Cornet. As you can see, again, I want to move up in tandem with all the units. So making sure that units are just moving up together in a push. I got my Tor coming up. And then as you can see, the S-400s are doing a good job of covering my back over here. They're really causing a lot of disruption in this enemy air force. And anytime an enemy does bring a huge air force, bringing in S-400s is always a great thing to do because you can turn on the radar for the S-400s and you can make a very, very effective anti-air platform. We're going to bomb this forest because I think there's infantry in there. We're also going to move forward with the VDV. VDV, they don't, they have some good anti-tank units, but the infantry is not the best. But the cost is so cheap that it makes it worthwhile, right? You can get a ton of infantry units. Here we have ambush over here, so unfortunate. The Kolizia, I would say, is one of the best tube artillery in the game. So one of the best cannon artillery because it fires quick and it has a lot of shells. So it's a very good cannon artillery, and it's good at. And look at those missiles coming in. They absolutely devastated that infantry if it's still there. But it's good at basically saturating an area. And whereas, let's say you'd have two Mustas, you can have one Kolizia do the similar job just because of how fast it fires and how many shells it has. So that's typically what I bring. Here we have the VDV just sort of guarding my flank, that Cornet. Over here, the Metis are not that good in short range. We're going to move up the Medises. I'm going to try to take out this anti-tank or this anti-personnel grenade launcher. And then we're going to try to take out this guards unit in here. The guards are pretty good. They have an absolutely great RPG in the RPG-28. And they can hold their own against most tanks. And if they get side shots, they can basically disable a tank in one hit. So it's a very good unit. The Typhoon VDV also is excellent in terms of transportation because it moves so quick that it's hard to deal with, right? Like you can move troops very quickly around the battlefield, so it's very good. Here I'm gonna bring up these VDV as well, and we're gonna try to land them in the middle so we can push. So we're gonna bring them up in the Kamazes. I like bringing infantry up in the Kamazes because they're cheaper and they're faster. So it's a lot cheaper to bring up a lot of infantry. Over here, we're just gonna take out this supply vehicle. I think he was dropping off a new guards unit, so we're just going to take them out. We can see that I think those missiles were intercepted, yes, And that's the power of the S400, is that missiles in this game are overpowered, right? Any missile artillery is pretty great, but if you have S400s, you can counter it. So that's why, even though it's great to have missile artillery, there's a counter to it, and you'll see in Broken Arrow that for every weapon system, there's a counter, right? So let's say you have, you know, Cornets. The counter of that would be artillery, helicopters, right? Snipers even. There's a counter for everything in the game, and that's kind of cool, but it also makes the game very difficult, and it makes it less noob friendly, because you can't really spam any one unit. You have to actually use multiple units together. So here we're going to move the VDV up. I want to take out that transport just so we don't have it hanging out. So we're going to move up these positions. The one great thing about the infantry is that they can guard buildings very well, and that's typically what I use them for, is if you want to keep key position, just to guard buildings. I'm going to move up this Igla to take them out. The Russians, their future weapons, so the T-14 Armata, the T-15, they're absolutely great, and they can be overpowered if you use them right. So, like, even though they don't have them in real life, they're absolutely effective. They're fast. They're heavily armored. They're pretty good to use, especially the Kurganets. It's a cheap APC with decent firepower, so you have a pretty good selection with that Russian motorized unit, and players definitely take advantage of it. So here we're just going to be attacking this SPG. Teammates are doing a great job. I love how the teammates support each other. It's absolutely great. Here we have a helicopter who's taking some fire. One thing that's never good to do is to trade helicopters for lesser units, just because how expensive they are. But the Tor with the radar on absolutely is insane. It has great range, and this Tor I upgraded with 16 missiles, so it's going to be very hard for the enemy to deal with that. Here I have the VDV just clearing out the area, clearing out the way for the stronger units. Here we have enemy Cornet as well, which we will take out. My VDV are taking the point back. They don't have enough infantry in this push, and one thing is, when you push with infantry, you typically want to accumulate enough infantry to push. So you don't want to just push with 1 or 2 units. You want to accumulate units and then sort of push in like one strong wave, and that's what this opponent's not doing. He's just getting manhandled unit by unit. He's not saving up his reserves and then pushing. Over here we have the VDV moving up. I'm going to use them as sort of a flanking protection force. We have a helicopter coming in, and we have supply coming in at the right time. I believe that Verbo was out of ammunition. I have an army of Spruts coming in, as you saw on the left. These guys, I typically like to do a armored push when you have a lot of cheap tanks. You can do a big armored push and sort of surprise the enemy and then go in his back line. And even though most of your armor is probably going to get destroyed just because of how fragile armor is in this game, it's just great to be able to break the lines, and then once you break the lines, you can sort of rush in follow-on units, Russian infantry, Russian helicopters, to take advantage of what you did. So that's pretty good. We got the Verba moving up as well. We're bringing that 6 Spruts and 2 BMP Terminators. We have the VDV waiting for the assault. The Kolitsia, we're going to try to bomb this infantry. I gotta say, this Russian unit, I can't really pronounce their name, but they do have they're supposed to have like 14 men in the squad or something. They're very underwhelming, just for the price you pay. They're more expensive than 2 squads, but they don't offer that much more capability. So I gotta say, they're somewhat underwhelming. We're seeing our Spruts are attacking, and we're gonna take out this T-80. And this is the great thing about having a mass tank rush right here. It's very hard to deal with it unless you have a helicopter or enough ATGM squads, because they just have so much kinetic firepower. So we're going to be moving up. We're going to take out that supply depot. And we're just going to move up in a huge tank rush here. The big thing you have to worry about is if they have recon, they will call RD on these tanks. And the Spruts, they don't have the best armor, right? So like if it was a T-80s or T-90s, they would actually have enough armor to sort of shrug off some of the regular tube artillery. Here he's going to try to bring up a single Cornet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the distance, especially with the BMP Terminators, and we're just going to mow him down. The helicopter was a good play by the opponent. I don't really have as many AA assets as I'd like, and helicopters can absolutely ruin an armored push just because of how many missiles they can carry, right? You can get 16 missiles on an Mi-28, so that's going to absolutely destroy armored pushes. So we're going to try to get these infantry into the building. The armor is moving back. He's well aware of what I'm doing, and we're seeing friendly tanks, friendly T-90s and T-80s are rushing in, or enemy T-90s, T-80s. The Su-57 is doing some seed work. Or is hanging out. Here, made a little bit of a mistake. Again, the range on these helicopters is pretty great, so it's tough to sort of avoid them sometimes, especially with the LMUR upgrade, the Lemur. This thing has like 2,000 meter range, which that's more than ATGM's. That's right on the edge of the Verba range. So the LMUR is great for the Mi-28. It costs a lot, but if you can use it right, and I've seen people use it right, it's very effective. So I've managed to save most of my armored force, but I don't have any supply in the area. So we're going to see if we can do another push. I'm bringing up the Verba, which this is why I love man pads. They're hard to see, and the helicopters typically don't see them until it's too late. So we're going to bring that up, and then we're going to try pushing again. The enemy has some strong power on their right side. On their left side, they've somewhat given up just because of how strong our defense has been. So we're going to bring up this Sprut. And the Tor as well, I'm going to bring up a little bit risky bringing it out in the open. I don't really see any friendly units, but I know on this left side that the opponent has been very weak in his attack. So he's not really pushed up units past the capture point. So we're going to take out this T-80 over here, and then we're also going to fire at the helicopter. Dropped off some Russian Marines, so we're going to move up and we're going to try to sort of mow them down. The BMP Terminator is absolutely great at handling infantry, and the BMP Terminator, to be honest, is a great unit for the price, right? It costs significantly cheaper than most tanks at only 150 points, and is really good at mowing down infantry. BMP Terminator also shoots at aircraft, the bonus. He just narrowly missed my force with that missile. He's dropping off some Marines, but again, like they do make the armor penetration for infantry. Another missile comes in. Wow, just that one's even bigger than the previous one. So it must have been a cruise missile. BMP Terminator is taking hits from the BMP-3. But infantry, you want to keep away from these BMP Terminators because they will absolutely wreck them. We see that the S-400s, they have been working all game, and these are the heroes of the match because they've taken out so many enemy aircraft that it's insane, right? They've done a great job of keeping the skies clean, and with the Russians, their main focus should be keeping the skies clean because the U.S. have marginally better aircraft and helicopters. So the U.S. Apache, I think, is probably the best helicopter in the game. I don't want to quote it. The Russians do have the Mi-28, which is great as well. But the Apache has pretty great range in their Hellfires and is pretty great. We see on that right side that we are having some breakthrough, but it looks like my teammates have the control of the situation. We're moving up. We see the T-15. He doesn't see my infantry, so he's going to have a rude awakening. The Kolitsia, I'm going to fire back on his artillery. We're going to flank this T-15. He brought AA, which was smart, but I don't think it'll survive the engagement. We've taken out the AA, and now we're just going to overwhelm his T-15. See, my artillery is working on his artillery. The BMP Terminator is in great position. Taking out the T-15, and now we're just going to destroy his attacking force. And this is what I mean by attacking in a wave. You don't want to have everyone attacking one by one because it's easy to take apart. And so you see the helicopters have come in. We're taking out this Cornet, and we bring the victory. So this was an absolute domination on our end. Hats off to my teammates, especially the guy who bought the S-400. For more Broken Arrow beta gameplay, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.